Imagine this. Friends, let's make a bold assumption. You wake up, just like any other day. The sunlight hits your pothose plant just right, and the coffee machine gives its all-done beep. You take a sip. Perfect, as always. Everything is so real. So real, it's almost boring. But then, you look down at the table, right where you left your keys last night, and there's a note. It's an old-fashioned, curled-edge piece of paper. You are certain it wasn't there last night. You pick it up. It is just one line, you're on level 4. They're watching. Don't deviate from the script. How do you feel? Does your skin instantly crawl? You'd probably shake your head, assume it's a prank from your partner, or maybe you were sleepwalking. But what if the note is telling the truth? What if the smell of your coffee, the light on that plant, what if it's all just preset code? You aren't you. You're just a program. This bone-chilling idea, it's not something I just made up. There's a philosopher named Nick Bostrom, and his what-if game is way bigger than mine. I gotta tell you, he wasn't writing sci-fi. He was doing math. He used a cold, almost undeniable calculation to reach a conclusion: the probability that we are living in the real world is less than 0.0000001%. The number he came up with is that the probability we are a simulation is greater than 99.999999%, with a whole lot of nines. Nick Bostrom's argument, to put it in plain English, is like a pick one of 3 Wheel of Fortune. He tells us that one of the following 3 possibilities must be true. Option 1, humanity hits game over. Meaning, our species goes extinct, from nukes, an asteroid, or rogue AI, before we ever develop the technology to create virtual worlds, before we unlock the post-human tech tree. If this happens, then no simulators ever get made. We're the real deal, but we're also the last of our kind. Option 2, humanity reaches max level and becomes enlightened. We do become a post-human civilization, with enough computing power to simulate 1,000 universes. But, for some high-minded moral reason we can't understand, or maybe just out of sheer boredom, almost none of them ever bother to simulate their ancestors. They all become saints. They have the power, but they just don't do it. Option 3, you and I are just NPCs. Friends, do you see the trap here? As long as option 1, extinction, doesn't happen, and option 2, enlightenment, also doesn't happen, even if only 1 in a million post-humans decides to run a simulation for fun or research, what happens? Not one simulated world, not 100. Billions. Tens of billions of simulated worlds would be created. Because for a post-human civilization, simulating an ancestor world might be as easy as us playing The Sims today. Now, you do the math. One real physical world, the base world, versus billions of simulated worlds. You, as a conscious being, what's the probability that you just happen to be in? The probability that you're in that one and only base world, or the probability that you're in one of the billions of simulated ones? The answer is obvious. Bostrom's argument is a logical trap. You don't have to believe it 100%. You just have to admit that humanity might have this potential, and just like that, your reality is diluted. How much impact did this have? Even Elon Musk has publicly endorsed it, saying he thinks the odds we're in base reality are 1 in billions. Does it send a shiver down your spine? Does that coffee cup in your hand feel a little lighter? If you like this kind of mental roller coaster, well, it's not easy work putting this together. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit subscribe. We'll keep talking. This game, this unbeatable trap set by Nick Bostrom, how do we break it? Faced with this kind of logic trap, you feel powerless, right? But hold on, the first tough guy of philosophy is stepping up. His name is G.E. Moore, a British philosopher from the 20th century. And I gotta say, this old-timer's way of arguing was basically unreasonable. Picture this, Bostrom just finished his brilliant, logical presentation, proving they're 99.999999% fake. Bostrom sits down, smugly takes a sip of water, and waits for Moore's rebuttal. G.E. Moore calmly stands up, holds up one of his hands, and says to everyone, "Here is one hand." Then, he holds up his other hand, "Here is another hand." Finally, he concludes, "My hands are real things. Therefore, the world is real. I am not an NPC." Argument over. Dead silence. Are you baffled? Are you thinking, that's it? It feels like a joke. He's not even, this is like a total cop-out. Bostrom, we might be in a virtual world. More, I don't care. I'm real. They're not even on the same wavelength. But friends, don't boo him off the stage just yet. Moore had a deeper logic for doing this. He spent his whole life on one mission, defending common sense. Moore's point is this: Bostrom, your argument, all that stuff about computer science, computing power, philosophy of mind, it's a castle in the sky built on possibility. But my belief that I have two hands, that is the foundation. You cannot use a castle in the sky, no matter how logical it seems, to demolish a foundation that I am 100%, absolutely certain of. In other words, G. E. Moore is asking us a question: Bostrom's logical premises or I have two hands, which of these two beliefs are you more willing to bet is absolutely, unshakably true? Most people would pick I have two hands. So Moore's point is, no matter how elegant your argument is, if it leads to the conclusion that I don't have hands, or my hands are fake, that just proves that your castle in the sky must have a flaw in it somewhere. It's a powerful common-sense iron fist. Of course, later philosophers thought Moore's argument was messy. It wasn't analytical enough. It needed to be packaged better, given some philosophical flair. And so, Neo-Mooreanism was born. The Neo-Mooreans added a safety patch to Moore's common sense. It's called the safety principle. What's that? Let's use an analogy. Your belief is like your home Wi-Fi signal. Some Wi-Fi signals are unsafe. For example, you believe it's raining in New York today. Why is this unsafe? Because in a nearby possible world, just imagine, in the parallel universe right next door, maybe that cloud zigged instead of zagged, and it's not raining. This belief could easily be wrong. But other Wi-Fi signals are extremely safe. For example, you believe I am a real person in the real world. Bostrom jumps in right here, not so fast. In the parallel world next door, you could be an NPC. The Neo-Moorean just waves him off. No, Nick. That NPC world you're talking about? It isn't next door. It's in another galaxy of possible worlds. It is way too far away. Why? Because to make that NPC world true, you have to change too many settings. You're not just changing does it rain today, you have to change the entire laws of physics, the origin of the universe, the nature of consciousness, all of it. The Neo-Moorean point is, for this kind of remote possibility that is so far away from our reality, our common sense is safe. We have every right, just like Moore, to hold up our hands and trust our common sense. So, you see, whether it's old Moore or new Moore, their move against Bostrom is a kind of strategic dismissal. They're not solving his math problem. They're saying, the givens in this word problem are too ridiculous. I'm not doing it. Did this ignore it tactic work for you? You probably still feel like they're just talking to themselves, right? No one's landed a direct hit. Don't worry. The next guy is a direct hit kind of character. His name is Jonathan Birch. He's not standing outside the ring, he's the logic police, or maybe an engine mechanic. He's putting on gloves, crawling under Bostrom's logic engine, and he's determined to see if the parts are bad. Birch gets straight to the point. Nick, your logical deduction is flawless. I'll give you that. But the premises you fed into it to get it started, those have a huge problem. What problem? Birch says you're using a double standard, or to put it another way, you're lopsided in a ridiculous way. Bostrom's entire argument is built on two very asymmetrical premises. Let's call them P1 and P2. Premise P1, scientific confidence. I am extremely confident in my scientific knowledge of the world, like physics, computer science, and that enough computing power can create a simulation. Premise P2, self-ignorance. I am extremely ignorant about whether I, myself, am an NPC. Birch steps up, adjusts his glasses, and asks, Nick, don't you think it's weird to have P1 and P2 in the same person? It's like meeting someone who tells you, I have mastered quantum mechanics and general relativity, and I can recite the periodic table from memory, that's P1. But I'm not totally sure if I'm breathing right now, and I don't know if I cast a shadow, that's P2. What's your reaction? You'd think that guy has a serious problem, right? How can one person's knowledge be so lopsided? He knows everything about the external rules of the world, but nothing about where he is. That's the first gotcha. Birch points out, Bostrom, your ideal arguer doesn't exist in reality. Of course, Bostrom has a comeback. He can argue, computation is neutral. What does that mean? Bostrom says, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5. That calculation is true whether it's done in the real physical world or a virtual simulated world. The logic of math is independent of its physical material. So, Bostrom says, my confidence in computer science, P1, doesn't contradict my uncertainty about being data, P2. Birch just laughs. Really? You sure? You're sure that if the physics changes, the computation stays the same? Birch lands a critical counterattack. Where does your P1 confidence, your confidence that computers can simulate worlds, come from? It's based on the physics of our world, right? You're seeing transistors and silicon chips and how their power is exploding. But what if this simulation we're in uses a different physics? Birch has us imagine, in the real world, the base world, they used silicon CPUs. But in our simulated world, the child world, the element silicon doesn't even exist. We're using brass and gears to run our calculations. Friends, can you even compare the computing power of those two systems? Birch's point is, your P1, confidence in computing, is based on silicon. But your P2, I don't know where I am, admits you might be in a brass world. So where did that P1 confidence come from in the first place? You're just using selective skepticism to set up your argument. Bostrom might have one last move. He'll say, fine. Even if the materials are different, one piece of knowledge is certain, the computing power of my world must be less than or equal to the real world's power. Why? Well, either this is the real world, so the power is equal to itself. Or, this is a virtual world, and a child world's power must be less than the parent world's power, otherwise the parent couldn't run the simulation. So, Bostrom says, see? I'm certain about this computing power limit, P1, and that's more certain than P2. No problem. Birch just keeps shaking his head. Says who? Who told you a child world must have less power than a parent world? We, who might be in the parent world, our sci-fi writers can imagine and create a civilization more advanced than ours, right? Like the Marvel Universe. So why couldn't we simulate a Marvel Universe that has stronger computing power than our own? It's logically possible. So you see, after Birch's dissection, Bostrom's P1 premise, that confidence in science, is left in tatters. Birch's final conclusion is, Nick Bostrom, I'm not saying your three-choice wheel is logically wrong. I'm saying, the cost of entry for your argument is too high. You're forcing me to accept a weirdly lopsided setup, just so your argument can get started. That setup itself, while logically possible, is just too strange, and it makes your whole argument seem wobbly. Okay, Birch's direct assault is over. He's taken Bostrom's engine apart. So, what do we do with an argument that might be logically sound, but is based on a really weird premise? Well, the next guy to take the stage is the rock star of philosophy. He walks up, pats Birch and more on the shoulder, and then says to Bostrom, don't worry about it. Nick, you're right. We're virtual. So what? Last time, we talked about G.E. Moore. I'm not listening, using his common sense iron fist. And Jonathan Birch. Your premises are flawed, using his logical scalpel to take the engine apart. Two great masters, one external style, one internal. Both put on a great show. But then, the rock star of philosophy, David Chalmers, wanders onto the stage. This guy is a big deal, his work on consciousness is legendary. He walks up, gives Moore a round of applause, good for you, old man, and pats Birch on the shoulder, nice work, brother. Finally, he turns to Nick Bostrom. Bostrom braces himself, expecting another attack. Instead, Chalmers opens his mouth, and the whole room is stunned. He says, Nick, you're right. Let's stop arguing. We are living in a virtual world. So what? Friends, do you get this move? It's a philosophical judo flip. He caught the bomb Bostrom threw, and just put it in his pocket. Moore and Birch were trying to figure out how to prove Bostrom is wrong. Chalmers takes a different path. He says, even if Bostrom is 100% correct, and we are 99.999999% NPCs, so what? It doesn't, in any way, affect the reality of our lives. You're probably baffled again. How can virtual be real? Chalmers tells us we're afraid of virtual because, deep down, we are all substrate chauvinists. It's a fancy term, but I'll translate. It means we, as a species, have this weird superiority complex. We think that stuff made of atoms and molecules is automatically more real than stuff made of bits and code. Chalmers asks, why? He asks us to consider a question: what is bread? A loaf of bread, made of flour, water, yeast, which are atoms. It fills you up. That's real bread. Now, what if, in a supercomplex simulated world, an NPC, like me, is hungry? I eat a virtual loaf of bread, which is really just a string of code. And after I eat it, I'm really not hungry anymore. My virtual hunger bar is full. So, for me, the NPC, is there any difference between the virtual bread and the real bread? Chalmers says, no difference. This is functionalism. The reality of a thing isn't in its materials, but in its function. What's a clock? Something that tells time. Doesn't matter if it's mechanical or digital. What's a partner? Someone who can love me. Doesn't matter if they're carbon-based or silicon-based. Let's go back to that simulated hurricane example. A skeptic says, look, you simulate a hurricane in your computer, but it can't get your real computer wet. See? It's fake. Chalmers laughs. A simulated hurricane can't get your real computer wet. But friends, it can get the simulated computer in the simulated world wet. Do you get this paradigm shift? Reality isn't its ability to interact with the world above it. Reality is demonstrated by its ability to interact with other things on its own level according to a consistent structure and rules. As long as virtual bread can fill a virtual stomach. As long as a virtual lover can give me a virtual heartbeat. As long as my virtual boss pays me a virtual salary. Then in this virtual but logically consistent world, all of it is real. So, Bostrom's argument, in Chalmers' view, isn't a horror story, it's just Genesis, the B-side. Bostrom is just telling us that our substrate, our foundation, might not be physics. It might be computation. We're not afraid of virtual. Friends, let's be honest, we're afraid of meaninglessness. We're afraid that if the world is fake, then our pain, our joy, our struggles, are they all just a joke? And Chalmers stands up and tells us, no. Even if this is a game, as long as the rules are stable, as long as your pain in the game is real pain, and your love is real love, your experience is meaningful. That is the ultimate judo flip. Bostrom defined what we are, and Chalmers redefined what is real. Alright friends, this philosophical summit is, at its peak. Bostrom was the landlord with a perfect hand, and we watched 3 farmers play their cards. Let's do a quick recap. Today's 3 breakers represent 3 martial arts styles. First, G. Moore, the common sense iron fist. This is an external style, rock solid. He doesn't care how fancy your logic is. I'm not listening, I don't believe it. He trusts his own real hands. He uses his foundation to smash your castle in the sky. Second, Jonathan Birch, the logical scalpel. This is an internal style, targeting the vital points. He crawled into Bostrom's engine and pointed out. You used double standard parts to start this thing, your lopsided premise, the cost is too high. Third, David Chalmers, the Great Reversal. This is a mental style, almost Zen. He took Bostrom's entire attack, and said, you're right, so what? He didn't argue are we real or fake, he just redefined what is real. Okay, we've seen all the moves. Now, let's go back to Act 1. Back to our bold assumption. You wake up, you find that note, you're on level 4. They're watching. What do you think, how would these 3 react to that note? G. Moore would probably look at it, scowl, mutter what is this crap? And then crumple it up and throw it in the trash. He'd go on drinking his coffee. Because this note violates his common sense. Jonathan Birch? He'd be holding the note, starting his logical analysis. What's the probability of this note appearing? What's the ink composition? Who put it here? Is it a prank? He'd become suspicious of the note itself, not the world. And David Chalmers? He'd pick up the note, read it, and laugh. He'd say, ha, level 4? Interesting. Then he'd put it in his pocket as a souvenir and continue on with his real day. Because he knows, even on level 4, the coffee is still fragrant and the person he loves is still warm. So, friends, what's my take on all this? Nick Bostrom's argument is like a mental gym. Its greatest value isn't the 99.999999%. It's that it forces all of us, including these great philosophers, to stop and think hard about an ultimate question we're usually too lazy to ask. What is real? We've never been afraid of the word virtual. We're afraid of meaninglessness. We're afraid that if the world is fake, then our struggles, our pain, our joy, our love, are a joke, a program that can just be deleted. And Chalmers, at least, gives us a Zen answer: as long as your experience is structurally coherent, as long as your love can cause a real heartbeat, then that meaning has nothing to do with whether you're made of atoms or bits. Alright, the masters have made their moves. Now, it's your turn. These three, which one do you side with? Whose rebuttal was the most successful? Or do you have a fourth move that can get us out of Bostrom's simulation in style? Head to the comments, cast your vote, and let's talk about your take. Good night, my friends.